living in moldy homes, past mold exposures, heavy metal issues, metal in your brain, amalgam fillings, right? Hidden infections in the jaw. Those things need to be dealt with correctly. If you don't get the mercury out of your brain correctly, it's a factory upstream that's killing your fish down here. And I agree. If you don't fix your gut, you're not going to get well, but it has to be done right.
So we did a podcast a couple months ago with Dr. Thomas Levy, and he made this quote of, "You can't drive while you're still in the shower." And for the listeners out there talking about Hashimoto's and what we're just talking about, fixing the actual cell issue, I do go to a functional medicine doctor, and I often talk about advocating in the allopathic world, in the Western, modern day medicine, but we also have to advocate for ourselves regardless. And so this is just one of those reminders of listening to this show and actually being a part of this show of, hey, we got more work to do.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you are listening to that and you are a visual person, I highly recommend going on the Healing Resets YouTube channel and looking at that beautiful drawing of the cell that Dr. Pompa just shared.
People go, I get that. That's why I still feel well, right? That's why I've done all these amazing things and I'm still sitting here going, what is wrong with me? It's your cell, honestly. I mean, it really is. That's why your hormones aren't working right. That's why your brain's not working.
Well, I think so many of us, including myself, are visual. And so that was really helpful of, hey, upstream. Oh, okay, it's not working. Go further upstream. We haven't got to the actual cause yet of your issue. And I say that speaking to so many listeners out there, but including myself, like, what is the upstream cause?
Yeah, and here's the other thing too, is in my three-legged stool of solution, and we don't have enough time for me to get into that, but we're always addressing the cause to get well, right?
Yeah.
Gut is a big deal. And I know most of your listeners have probably heard that. But here's the frustrating thing for me, is that people are thinking just by taking some bacteria that they're going to fix their gut problem. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but it's not so simple. Mm-hmm. So when you look at really what's going wrong with the gut, it is the upstream issue. So a perfect analogy of that, when we've been saying upstream, let's change it to up the river for a second. So let's, for example, say that you buy a piece of property on this beautiful, gorgeous river. You're so happy about it. And then you go down to the river and you realize, gosh, there's no fish and there's dead fish even. And it looks like there's no plant life. That's probably the issue. So you spend a lot of money on, putting new plants in and getting the water right and the soils around it. And you didn't stock new fish in it. And you're so happy because it looks great for a few months. And then the fish are dying again. And then the plants are dying again. So you do it again. You spend another $10,000 and you do it again. And maybe you do it a third time. Finally, your neighbor comes down and says, hey, Joe, you might want to save your money. 20 miles upstream, there's a factory that's dumping lead or mercury or arsenic, whatever it is, into the river. So until we deal with that, you're not going to be able to fix what's down here. That's the way our gut is. Good luck fixing your gut when you have an upstream issue. Again, we mentioned some living in moldy homes, past mold exposures, heavy metal issues, metal in your brain, amalgam fillings, right? Hidden infections in the jaw. Those things need to be dealt with correctly. If you don't get the mercury out of your brain correctly, it's a factory upstream that's killing your fish down here. And I agree. If you don't fix your gut, you're not going to get well, but it has to be done right.
So let's move into the section that provides hope. Let's move into the exciting section. You've developed the 5R principles and kind of a roadmap to detox. Can you describe what this looks like for someone saying, hey, this sounds like something I'm interested in. I want to detox, but I want to do it right. Dr. Pompa, how do I do it right?
Again, all of this, I can't take credit for. I always say I'm not smart enough. It all came out of my own battle, right? But I was lecturing to a group of doctors in California, and I remember being on the airplane being absolutely frustrated because I knew they didn't get it. I'm talking about the cell in the detox pathways and glutathione and methylation, the membranes and all the endoplasmic reticulum. And I just got that look. I've lectured long enough to know that they didn't get it. Yes. So I thought on the way home, I was literally praying because I'm out of frustration, and which often happens. And the 5 R's that you mentioned started coming to me, and I just, boom, here it came. And again, not smart enough to come up with it, only to realize much later how brilliant it was, because the brilliant scientists looked at it and said, that is exactly the problem. How did you come up with that? I'm like, I don't know. But anyways, the 5 R's has become a roadmap of how we fix the cell, how we upregulate the detox pathways of the cell, how we downregulate the genes that get turned on. And just, I don't want to bore people with science here, but I'll just quickly state what they are. R number one, I think, is the obvious: remove the source. We talked
Hmm.
about that already, so we can move on. R number two is regenerate the cell membranes. I'm pointing to my picture that I drew. This cell membrane, critical, as I pointed out. It's the gatekeeper of the cell. This is where the hormone receptors are. I didn't talk about these inner membranes of the mitochondria, the nucleus. They too are important. We have to regenerate those membranes. Otherwise, we'll never turn the genes off and we'll never detox correctly. R3, we have to restore the cell energy. If you've read about today of what they're saying is the big cause of many problems, it's mitochondrial issues. Now, for the average person, that doesn't mean much, but all it means is your energy in your cell, your batteries are low, and it's
Hmm.
affecting the function of your new toy, your
Yeah.
cells. So we have to upregulate that to get the cell detoxing and functioning normal. I have many methods, including dietary variations, fasting strategies to help that. And then R4 is reduce the inflammation of the cell. Again, many strategies that I teach that are about that. R5 is reestablishing something called methylation. If you don't have this working, your cells won't detox normally. You won't turn bad genes off. So those are the 5 R's. And it is a roadmap that even the public now has caught on to, is like, yes, this is what I need. But there's strategies, many, for each R. And that's what
Now,
I teach.
your strategies include kind of, and I keep thinking we keep talking in threes, a three-step process of preparatory, body, and then getting to the deep brain
Yeah.
detox issue. Is that still how your program looks?
Yeah, I talk in threes because magic happens in threes, but we
Yeah.
can remember threes too. But yes, it is. We don't just jump into detox. We prepare your cells
Yeah.
and your downstream detox pathways, right? That's very important. And when we do that, then we set ourselves up for success. And then the next phase is what I call body phase. And that's where we just get the easy to get toxins out of the body. And then the third phase is what I like to call brain phase. That's the phase that I got my life back in. That's the deeper phase of detox, but we have to work our way to it. And I want to bring something up. And again, I'm a visual person. So, she's right. If you're not seeing this, you might want to get the link where
Head
you can
onto
actually see it.
YouTube.
So if I put my 5 R's in this cell and we start getting the cell to do what it should do, detox, right? Well, the
Yeah.
problem is it starts moving toxins out of that cell. We mentioned earlier about chelators. Chelators, their job really is to grab these toxins that your cell starts moving out. If we don't do that, they redistribute. They start going other places, other cells, new places, right? So here's where the chelators are. And I mentioned one called cytodetox. I mentioned DMSA, DMPS, EDTA. But anyways, chelators belong out here as a vehicle to move the toxins all the way out of the body. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
just in review, we get the cell working with that process that I was discussing. And then once the cells start working, they'll start moving toxins out, but we better have these vehicles to move them out of the body so we don't redistribute. Now, there's one other problem. This is something that I, again, happened upon, if you will. I believe God gave it to me, but many of the toxins are brought to our liver. So that is our liver. I'll write that in there. And they bind up with something called bile. That's where you use to digest fat. So they're brought to the liver. Many of the toxins bind up to bile. Now, if I, in my amazing ability to draw, as you see, I'm very good at it, I'm being facetious. That's your intestines. The toxins end up in the liver, bound to bile. Here's the problem. You use bile to digest things in your intestines, in particular fat. So you bring the toxins with the bile in the intestines. Here's the real problem. In the lower intestine, our bodies are designed to reabsorb the bile back to the liver. What does it bring with it? The
The
toxins.
toxins.
Yeah, that's called autointoxication. So one of the things I developed was I put a binder together called Bind, and it has 4 different types of binders in there. One that's very good with heavy metals, one that's better with infection type of biotoxins, molds, different binders for different reasons, but it doesn't leave the gut. It stays in the gut and acts like a catcher's mitt. So when the toxic bile gets dumped into the intestines, we don't auto intoxicate it. The catcher's mitt's there and it pulls it out of the body so you don't reabsorb it. So think about it as three parts. Number one, you have to upregulate the cell. You have to detox the cell to get well. Number two, you have to use chelators, but you have to use them correctly in their half-life and real chelators. And number three, you have to grab these toxins in the gut so we don't auto-intoxicate, especially people with leaky gut. Not good. So you can see we don't get to the cause. That's a pitfall. We don't get to the cell where the problem is. That's a pitfall. We don't use chelators correctly and then we get redistribution. That's a pitfall. We don't bind it in the gut so we don't auto-intoxicate. Another pitfall. All of that is part of what I teach. Cellular Detox.
Where can someone find more? They want to dig deeper with this because it's not simple. It's intuitive, I would say, listening to how you're presenting it, but it's not simple. And I think it's something worth walking alongside an expert, an integrative doctor, going through your program, making sure that if we're going to do this, let's do it right. So where can they find more information?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can find me on Facebook at Dr. Daniel Pompa. You'll see different things there that I do and have done. You can find me on Instagram if you just put Dr. Pompa in as well. Obviously, I do a lot of my Cellular Healing TV is a podcast I do. So if you go to cellularhealing.tv, you can see that. And I'm out there and there's a lot to learn. My website, drpompa.com, is another place.
Cellular healing, guys. Think through, it goes all the way down to our cells, and just think through the capacity that our body has to heal, but we have to get it at the root cause. We have to go upstream. Dr. Pompa, if there are 3 things that a listener can take today and just become better, what are 3 health tips you can give someone to walk away with today that they can implement?
Man, it feels like a review, but look, if you're not well yet, you're still not right. There's something upstream. Look for it. Look at your history. We all leave trails, right? That's number one. Number two, we talked about the fats. I think that one thing you can all start right now is paying attention to, don't get things with vegetable oil, canola oil. And even when I go out to restaurants, I tell them I'm allergic to it. And then to use real olive oil or butter, right? And most restaurants will accommodate you, surprisingly. So, avoid those types of things. That is really important. And I think lastly, look, our thoughts really can drive inflammation. And I know it sounds wokey hokey, but it's not. Thoughts are wavelengths, right? And negative thoughts drive cellular inflammation. Positive thoughts actually can be a corrective factor. So if we think about the stressors that drive inflammation and overflow our bucket, physical, chemical, emotional, well, we can change that. We can change the emotional component, and then it helps with everything else.
Super well said. Dr. Pompa, thank you so much for your time. This has just been a lot of information, but again, as we talked about in the beginning, it's applicable to everyone. It's applicable to our children. It's applicable to us in our middle-aged years, or even well into our wisdom in our elder age. Yeah, we really appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.